Okay.
Good morning and welcome to Caloundra Regional Gallery. My name is Nina Shadforth, curator of the exhibition Johana De Maine, The Form, the Function, the Aesthetic. And joining me here today is the artist herself, Johana De Maine. Welcome, Johana.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet here today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So, we're standing here today beside a very significant pot of Johana's from the early 70s. And Johana, would you like to talk to us about this work? What's the pivotal piece that it seems to be?
I first started in clay in 1971, and we didn't have bagged clay, as we do now.
Yeah.
I used to make up my own clay body from brickwork clay from Yeppoon. This was an earthenware piece. I first started off in earthenware and then graduated. So, and this is coil built, and I think this was probably 1972, 73, or even, maybe 71. I was always pushing to do more and bigger and better, even at that very early stage. But I was really happy with that.
It's quite ambitious for a very early work, isn't it, in terms of the size and the form, and as well as making your own clay to work from.
I guess so, but I've never been a conforming person, so...
That's right, yeah. So, and just to expand on this early work, we know that ceramics found you, so can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, I didn't grow up in an art background at all. My parents were really busy trying to establish themselves as economic refugees in Australia in 1954. So, from a big family, there was no room and time for art. It was all just survival. So consequently, when I started school, I was drawing happily like anybody else. You know, I was 6 years old when we first came out, and teacher told me that my drawing wasn't really good. So, like I guess many other children do, I just retreated into myself and said, I can't draw. I can't do anything like this. So, and for the rest of until 1971, I just moved away as much as I could. Even at teachers' college, I skipped every art and craft lesson because it wasn't examinable, because it wasn't of any interest to me.
Wow.
Which is now
it's remarkable.
Yes, I know. But
when you look at what you're producing, you know, and what you have produced over the years, so
it's an interesting point that bad words, well, not bad words, but words that actually are not encouraging for young children with art can bring real phobias.
Oh, absolutely,
yes.
absolutely.
I still think I can't draw.
Well, I'm not so sure. When you
I'm drawing with clay, maybe.
When you look at the design aesthetic that you have there, the patterning, you know, that looks to me that it's come from a very creative hand and a skilled hand even at that stage. So, talking of skilled hands, are there other works that you, from there, that you want to sort of talk about the evolution? Yeah.
Well, I'd like to talk about how my work has developed, and it's always been pushing the boundaries. So we'll move on to the next stage of where I'm starting to do wheel throwing.
Yes.
This was in 1970. I started to work with wheel in 1973, teaching myself, because there was no wheel teacher, and we were living in Gladstone at the time. And then we made a homemade wheel as well.
You really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like, then back in those times.
Well, at the end of 1973, we actually went travelling, Ted and I, because we were footloose and fancy-free, as you might say, no family. Yeah. Because we went overland for a 6-month trip backpacking, hitchhiking, and all the things that you don't do nowadays.
You wouldn't do these days. No.
So I encountered in Bali, that was our first call, I encountered all these Asian pots, Chinese pots,
Yep.
that were being sold in the markets. And that just blew me away, seeing these huge platters,
Yep.
Sullivan glazes, Temuku glazes, all these things which were quite foreign to me. Carlos, our first son, was actually born in England, and during that time we were actually going to stay and live in England because my husband, late husband, was English.
Yep.
And but as soon as he went back to England and saw that, hey, it's grey, 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 no, it wasn't going to be a long-term thing.
Yeah.
So, in the meantime, I didn't have any room to keep on with pottery because there was no room to do and I had no equipment. So I went to like an adult education TAFE type institute for 1 year, and that's where this piece was one of the set projects that I had to do to make a medieval jug.
Uh-huh.
In my limited skills, that's a 2-piece jug, which we now can do very easily. In one, I've got one sitting as throwing. This is 2 pieces joined
So
together.
so talk to us about that. What in terms of it being a 2-piece jug, just so
Well,
our
you
audience know.
you throw the one bottom piece, you throw the top piece, and then you join them.
Yep.
Try
Okay.
not to.
And is that the part of the reason why the glaze is where it is?
No, that's very much in the tradition of medieval jugs.
Yeah,
They
okay.
didn't always get fully glazed, and to me at that time it just seemed to be a natural place for it to end. And that's stayed with me since 1975, that piece. So
Okay.
I will never part with that. It just
No,
is one of
it's a special piece.
piece, yeah.
There's a lot that's gone into that, including making the actual wheel to throw it on, right? Okay, so what's next from here?
The next step was in my wheel throwing self-guided lessons, because living in Gladstone then, we went back to Gladstone, well, not actually Gladstone, out Clivey, but living in that area, there was no access to TAFE colleges and art schools. So I would go down for workshops in Brisbane, fly down and do that sort of thing. But on the other hand, we were making domestic work, because I was making domestic work. I was really into the ethos of the Leach tradition, making domestic things, and using the skills, and it was the domestic work, the functional work, which gave me the skills to go on to do what I was doing. It was that repetition, and I enjoyed every moment of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just making the piece, it was the glazing, the firing, the whole process. And I always just wanted to do it myself.
Uh-huh.
Never employed anybody, except Ted came into the business as my apprentice, and he became a potter, moving away from his profession as butcher, which was much more satisfying, but not as money-wise as butcher. I'm looking for words here. It's,
Profitable.
Profitable, yes. Well,
Yeah.
yes. People don't need pots, but they need meat.
True.
So, it's a change of profession and emphasis. But we did this so we could both be available for our children at the same time.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle choice as well.
It was a
isn't it?
lifestyle
Absolutely.
choice, and it was a total obsessional choice as well.
Yes.
From that, at this period of time, in one of the workshops, I encountered the McConnells, Philip especially, who became a close friend with Ted and I. And Philip came up to do a workshop in Gladstone for the Gladstone Area Potters Group, of which I was very much part of the formation of that group. And he wanted us to do a salt workshop. I provided a venue. We got the bricks, high alumina fire bricks, from the alumina refinery, alumina refining in Gladstone, who cut all the bricks. They came out of the calcination kilns, and they're the bricks that pot is sitting on. So I learned to do salt glaze, and that
so
became obsessive at the same time. During this time, I understood that I needed to actually keep on working as individual pieces rather than just only domestic wear.
Yeah.
I started to use decorating techniques which were from the Asian tradition, the Chinese, Japanese. That is fluting and faceting.
And that's what we're looking at here right now. Yeah.
So that was being incorporated into it. Now these actual pieces were acquired by the
Queensland
Art
Art
Gallery. This, and this.
Yes.
So yes, well, that was in 1978, I think.
Yes.
So my skills were still developing, but I really enjoyed the freedom of fluting. It was just doing it. And at the same time, it was very ordered.
Yeah, it is, and you can just see more experimentation and development of the aesthetic for the fluting with your design. So
my forms at that time were very much influenced by the Chinese and Japanese.
yes, yeah, very much so.
And I'm still in that zone. So some of the domestic wear was actually going through as well, and I started introducing coloured glazes into the salt. But I learned this from Philip McConnell, who helped me tremendously with the glaze, the actual glazes. So I had quite a lift with that one. From there, we go to
Over to the blush.
the blush pieces and other coloured salt pieces.
So coloured salt and blush pieces. So which was first? And the clay too, you talked about.
Yes.
Talked about using different clay. So
Which was first? I started using white clay, not just the iron-bearing clay like this piece here. So I needed more colour because the white, it was a porcelainous clay, but it wasn't giving much response with the salt over it. It was just grey, which some of the people find very nice, but it just lacked oomph. So I started putting cobalt or copper into the salt before we threw it in. So that not only was the salt evaporating, so was the oxides. So this is actually copper, which has fumed at the same time as the salt was thrown in, and we are getting this pink coming from here. And this is another sample of this. I don't think I've put any of the blue ones in. I did the same with the cobalt one.
that's right.
Dark ones. That was from there. I was doing a lot of salt glazing, and by this time we had actually shifted to Landsborough. This was 1981. Doing a lot of salt glazing and seeing that my kiln was starting to deteriorate. I wanted to keep it alive for as long as I could. So I thought about the fact that, well, one firing I'll do salt, next firing I won't put any salt in and just use the salt that is
The residual
salt that is evaporating from the walls of the kiln. And this is the result.
and it's stunning.
I played with it and exhibited it, and I think this was one of the very first pieces that, and I think Queensland Art Corgoma bought that one.
That's right.
But at the same time as doing all this blushing, I was using the fluting, I was still using the same techniques that I have always been comfortable with, which is not drawing. This is just free mark making, gouging, removal. Where to go from here? But at the same time,
So, there is some free hand drawing in these works, these two particularly, and the Quagoma piece. So,
well,
but patterning
Yes,
you
yeah.
know, from pattern to pattern, but freehand also.
Well, you're seeing this free drawing. Well, all the domestic wear was being slip trailed on top, and I was doing all the decorating of that, and I felt comfortable doing that, but that's not sitting there and drawing somebody's face or a landscape or anything.
Yeah.
But that was very free. When I was down at Monash trying to get some credentials so I could teach ceramics, being self-taught, I put in a thesis proposal for patterning, and this was one of the pieces that came out. I was looking at Matisse, and I was trying to look at his cutouts and the colours of Aribi ware and his association with the Japanese. So then I started doing that. Now, one of the pieces went through a wood salt kiln, and that is the result. And from that grew the patterning, like this white piece here. I was still very much just free patterning, no landscape images or symbolism or anything like that. And at the same time, I was then introduced by Owen to Gustav Klimt, which was just a revelation. He used gold and higher levels of skill because in his paintings, because the nouveau rich, which had come up, the new middle class, wanted to display their wealth.
Yeah.
So their paintings were more iconic. So my mind's going, yes, how can I do this with my work? And I decided that I would make my one-off work, my individual work, more personal and iconic.
Yeah.
And I had the perfect icons.
And you do, yeah.
The
right.
glasshouse mountains, they're just part of my life.
Yeah.
You know, they sit there as peaks on a plain. And when
Let's go to that, so we can pan to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Taking our children up and down to school or collecting them in the morning, sometimes we'd go up to Malane and the cloud is down, the mist is down, and all you could see would be these peaks,
Beautiful
floating. So my thinking became, well, I can use these as mountains, I can use these as sails, because I also grew up in Maroochydore. The beach is very much part of my
It's like your upbringing. And
my upbringing, yes. So I started using very personal symbols, and a lot of the symbolism is very personal, but people can get out of it what they can see in it. I make stories, narratives on my work.
And this piece is the beginning of that.
That is the beginning
and
of
landscapes
that.
being
This,
on your
I
work,
wanted, still in my quest for credentials, after doing the graduate diploma with visual arts with Owen, I did a MFA at QUT, which is Queensland University of Technology, and just followed the lustres, because I started first using lustre at Monash as banding on the white piece, and the lustre took over, and I'm still playing with it.
Yeah, look, there's such an allure with the lustre that
it gives.
It's beauty with a price, though, isn't it?
Yes, it's very time consuming, and at this point I was actually doing all the mark making by resist, hand drawing, with a jantine, which is a name for
It's used in batik.
It's in batik, yes. But instead of using wax, I was using the lustre resist. Now, this is all done over the top of the fireplace, so now I was making pieces with just glades, no other decoration on it, and then I started working over the top of the fireplace, and this is where I've stayed because it is intriguing, absolutely intriguing. But at that time I was using the resist and drawing madly away, ended up with tennis elbow and tendinitis, and well, here I'm using the word drawing, but I was mark making.
Yeah.
And it was coming into groups of patterns, and then they became more symbolic here, more refined. Like, and this is Klimt's Tree of Life, which is still very much part of my work.
It appears throughout.
Yes.
The work too, we see.
Part of that, the reason, I guess, part of it is that for a long time, when I was doing all this, Ted had developed viral cardiomyopathy and struggling for life. And he did very well for 26 years with the damage that he had. But the whole symbolism of that is all very internal and very personal. But at the same time, I can see that people can interpret it in different ways.
That's right.
Yes, and I love colour.
But also playing with the form too, like these forms are, there's an interesting concept with a very small, shallow base, but then this flared outer.
I enjoy doing that. I'm not so sure that I want to return to that, but now I'm working with Southernized porcelain. This is porcelainous. It's a porcelainous body, so it's halfway to being porcelain.
Yep.
It's a dirty porcelain, let's call it that. Porcelain always being pristine white.
And pure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we then, where am I? I don't know if Southern Ice is going to let me get that. I can get the form, but I think in the firing it's going to go slump.
Yeah.
So a little down the track I'm going to revisit this. I tend to revisit certain shapes. I get hung up on doing one particular thing to improve my skills, because once again with the lustres and overglaze I have taught myself. I didn't have teachers. I've just researched old books, very old books, and then sort of gone through and thought, no, that's rubbish, that's a myth. Because I tested all these things, and a lot of what's written old time just doesn't bear up with the facts. Doesn't match up.
And testing, like we've seen in your studio, there's piles and piles and piles and piles of test tiles, and just testing how colours behave with one another, and lustres behaving with enamels and all sorts of things. Even that in itself is really a fascinating observation of what you do.
Yes, I guess it's. I like to think I have a semi-ordered mind, because you have to have an ordered mind to do testing to get any information out of it, and I need to have this information visually, because using lustres, the lustres are all just brown, like treacle when you use them, most of them.
Yeah.
So you have no idea of what you're doing. You've got to have a visual thing, and I'm a visual person. I see these things in my head and then do them.
Yep.
So that's how I go with the colours. That's why the testing, I need to be able to have a reference point, my own test charts, I guess.
A recipe.
Recipes or,
So let's talk about this, moving on from sort of freehand resist mark making, if you like, to out of necessity developing something really innovative in terms of mark making and decoration with your decals and sandblasting and
okay.
all those.
I was having a really good time doing all this, and then but at the same time I was also interested in matte and shiny with the gold, because I had been given granted a Church of Fellowship, which I took up in 2001. 12 weeks we spent looking at the major manufacturing areas of porcelain in Europe. And yes, just losing my train of thought here.
That's all right. Can we move around to some works that would be examples of that?
I was looking at health and safety and matte and shiny, and I was using layers of matte powders to actually try to achieve this. But then in 2000, and I was playing with this, and then in 2005, I had cancer. I had lymphatic cancer, and went through all the chemo and everything like that. But at the same time, but when I came out of it, I couldn't grip a brush, or I couldn't hold the damn thing anymore. So necessity made me think, right, I need to start making matte surfaces without having to buy erosion, like the factories. Well, actually, it was oh gosh, what are they called? Minton, part of the Minton. They're defunct now.
Royal Dalton?
Royal Dalton, thank you. The brain is going. Royal Dalton. But they used acid. They masked, they had the glaze. The traditional way was to have the fired glaze, then you put asphaltum, which is a bitumen base, not very healthy, to block out what you wanted to reserve, and then you would actually put it through acid.
Yeah, much like the etching process.
Yes.
You know,
that didn't appeal to me because I just got out of chemotherapy. I'm very
Understandably
concerned
so.
about my health. So brain's thinking. You think, well, how can I remove a surface? And I thought, yes, well, it was because of what the glassmakers were doing at that time. They were actually etching glass to give that matte surface with the shine to stop the light coming through. And I thought, well, we'll see. Glaze is glass, so why can't we try? Went out and bought myself a little portable sandblasting unit, which was about $100, not very efficient. But I learnt that if I could make masks, stencils, I could then, instead of using asphaltum, I could use the vinyl. And I decided to use vinyl stencils, which I cut myself because I still wasn't able to use my fingers very well. So I looked at they call a potter-cutter. Nowadays, these are very popular, but they're coming into the craft world as die cutters. They're cut, silhouette, everything, but they're like Mickey Mouse versions of a proper plotter cutter. I started off with a small one. I went to the sign agency and bought that. And now, I think it was, I don't know when it was, about 2000. I bought about 10 years ago, I bought a large rolling plotter cutter. Now this is simply like a printer, but instead of having print heads, it has blades. So you make your outline, put it through the computer. Oh, by this time I was becoming more computer literate. Through necessity.
Again, through necessity.
Through necessity.
And,
but also the challenge.
Yeah.
Also the challenge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I taught myself the programs. Oh, well, no, that's not 100% true. I actually did a computer-based art and design units at the university on the Sunshine Coast. Once again, trying to increase my skills.
But it's just such it's an interesting evolution for you out of necessity to still decorate the surfaces.
Oh, yes.
Using the computer.
Yes,
and
and I'm
technology.
very much into that now because this is modern time as well. I mean, today, contemporary, we're using the tools that we have today with old techniques.
Yes.
But keeping the old traditions alive, but using more contemporary tools. And this is how things have evolved always. Otherwise the art form will die if it's not in keeping with more modern thinking.
That's right.
But I'm still very much basically a plotter. These pieces have developed from removing the glaze. So what I started off doing was actually covering the piece all in luster, which some people think is wasteful, but hey, it's what you can get back for the piece in the end if you achieve what you want to do. So I made my masks, then I sandblasted the luster off, and the very first shine of the glaze, I haven't actually gone back into the clay body.
Clay,
So this is just glaze, shine, remove to make it eggshell finish, and it's a very satisfying process. But once again, it's all very time. So I'm collaging by this time. I'm actually collaging my stencils.
And the enamel is another feature that's characteristic of your work
Yes,
as well.
yes. I also wasn't. I haven't quite got to the painting part of being a free porcelain painter because it doesn't interest me. But I like the raised enamel as a counterpoint for different flat surfaces.
There's one work in particular, well there's two here that are beautiful examples. And all the enamel, plus the sand etching using the sandblaster, the decals and free design, but also computer design. So how long would that have taken you?
Oh, that might have gone through about anywhere between, I don't know, but at least that piece would have taken about 2-3 weeks, but I wouldn't have just been working on that piece.
That's right,
I work on about, if it's big pieces, I'd work about 3 or 4 at one sitting, and then go through the stages and follow those pieces through. Work through the day, night time goes into the kiln, fired, because these are all built up in layers. And this is when I started to add the dots. I started from just using the single 5 dots, which were just like little flowers to become very noticeable of my work, and also putting eyes on butterflies, just to, I use them as a focus to for the viewer to follow the piece around, that there is a story, that there is a narrative to it.
Very much a narrative.
Rather than just a front and a back or a side. It just, the thing flows, and I try to, there's a bit of, I play games in my mind when I do this, telling my stories, and some of them I wouldn't like to explain to people, but I find them very satisfying, and in the end, the process still has to be satisfying to the maker.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I started covering big areas with dots because necessity again. I've gone so far with this piece, one of the pieces, I'm not sure if it's this piece, and some glazers don't like this. Well, they do like being sandblasted, but there are crazed lines in it, and I couldn't, that just wasn't blending in with my view of how I wanted to do things. So
not part of the plan.
I started thinking, well, what would happen if I actually put the dots all over? And this is the result.
It's
but
beautiful.
that is time consuming, and I put it on with a stylus, one at a time.
One at a time.
But it's extremely meditative, extremely.
I imagine all of it would be though, from throwing the form and getting the shape that you want to, sort of layering all of the motives, and then these
everything's just step by step, by step by step, and
time management at its best, I think.
One of the things that comes up now a lot in my work is this sail.
Yeah.
It's either decollete or it's words from a one of the songs that lyrics that Ted wrote, and it does mean a lot to me, and so it'll still keep popping up. I now have bespoke decals made of that, but it depends on how you want to view the world.
Yeah. So
yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, I am finished.
Well, my next question was, you hinted at wanting to do a bit more sort of freehand with the enamel. So what is next for you to wrap up for today?
Oh, well, the next thing is I'm still working on the next thing, which is the actual designing of bespoke decals and getting these, because now I'm in a fortunate position where I spend half my time in Japan and work there. I have access to Japanese workshops. A screen printer is printing bespoke decals that I'm designing, because in Japan I don't have a sandblaster. So I've had to work in a different way around again. So every problem that comes up, I go around it and work out a new technique.
That's a creative mind. The way a creative mind thinks about, you need to pivot and find another alternative to continue your work it's amazing. Your career, close to 5 decades of pivoting. What you're creating out of that is just...
When you've got an obsession,
you'll find
go
a
to
way.
great lengths. And I guess this is my obsession.
Yeah.
I'm still... I'm working on just refining what I'm doing at the moment.
And so, just to note, the exhibition is on until the 26th of April, and at the beginning of April there will also be another exhibition of Johana's most recent works at Art on Cairncross. And
It's a joint exhibition.
it's a joint, yes, sorry, I meant to say that.
Sorry, it's with Tatsia Tsui.
Tell us about that. Yeah.
He's my partner in life and in business. And this is my new... We are also doing a collaboration. And we're doing collaborative work. And that is one of the collaborative pieces.
Territory.
It's purely decals that I've designed, had printed, but it's Tatsia's form.
So we'll be able to see more of the collaborative works at Art on Cairncross, and that opens at the beginning of April. Additionally, there is a beautiful exhibition catalogue that goes with this show. So they're available here at the gallery, and please do come and see this exhibition. It is absolutely stunning, and enjoy and tell your friends. Thank you, Johana, for joining us today.
Thank you.